All right, so the roof is done and now we're moving on to the next project. I've been little by little stripping paint off of this thing, but now it's time to really get some of these big surfaces done. I really didn't want to take the trim off, but now that I've taken that off, it's going to be much easier to strip the paint on this thing. So we're going to go ahead and see what I can get done on this side today, and hopefully we can knock this out in a day or two and then move on to the other side. Once we get all this paint off, we can actually start working on a lot of the little details here and there. I've got things like the new fenders coming. I've got to fit the water inlet, things like that all need to get fit before painting happens. So if there's any chance of me getting this thing painted this year, I need to get this paint off. I do not like projects that are the same thing for hours and hours, so this is going to be tough, but we're just going to put some music on and just start cranking through this. I have been working on stripping the paint off of this thing now for probably months. I've done a lot of it off camera because this has been just a very time-consuming process, and I ended up doing it kind of in the heat of the summer, and it just was not real conducive to spending a lot of time in front of camera. But I want to show you guys some of what I've learned and show you guys how I'm actually stripping the paint off of this thing, and we're going to do a couple panels here together. Essentially what we're doing is we're taking this down to the bare aluminum because there were multiple layers of paint and the top layers had been rolled on, and so it was just not a very nice finish, and I realized that I did not want to have all that texture under whatever I was going to put on over this. it's sort of spiraled out of control, because the more I get into this, the more I want to deconstruct it to make it right. I don't know if I would have necessarily recommended taking it this far, but here we are. So we're just going to keep going and try to make our way through it. You can see on here, these are where the trim pieces were, and I've actually removed all of these because there's a small gap in between them and the siding, and I just wasn't able to get in there and really clean. I had hoped to keep these on, but I ended up pulling nearly all of them off, and I'm kind of glad I did, because I can see it, some of these screws are rusted out. So I'm going to go and buy some stainless screws and just replace as many as I can that were corroded. And then I'm really going to be able to get into this team and clean this caulk out. There's a lot of, I think it's silicone in here, or just some sort of older caulk. We're going to clean all this out and then re-caulk all of it before the trim goes back on. Nice thing about that is you won't see the caulk, but we're getting all that old gunk out of there, and it'll actually be sealed up. These are two separate panels from above and below these trim pieces, but they are overlapped so that as water runs down, it's not trying to go inside. So sealing this is not like super duper critical. It's not a place where water is going to be likely to get in, but there are the screw holes. So we want to make sure that we're sealing this. There's probably butyl tape behind all this, but we are not removing this whole thing. On campers that are screwed on to wood frames, my understanding is that the right way to do it is actually to remove the metal and kind of rebuild it from the inside out, rather than gutting the inside like we're doing. But thankfully this is an aluminum frame camper and it's riveted on, so we should be good to do all of this with the skin still staying on. That's going to get a little interesting in some spots on the inside, but we'll get there when we get there. So I've been working my way around, pulled these trims off. I'd already done around the windows, so I didn't have to do that. Pulled the bunk windows out, taken off all the light fixtures, all of the weird stuff, like even like this door hold back came off. You can see down here I took the wheel wells off. They were cracked on both sides. I found a company called Sierra Engineering, and I'll link in the video, that makes reproductions, which is crazy to me. I never thought I'd be able to find that. They're fiberglass. I got them a little bit ago. They feel awesome. So I need to fit those on still. But essentially my focus has been get the bulk of the paint off, and then we'll kind of work on the details. So all these things like scraping the seams, and there's certain seams that do overlap that are visible that I'll have to get caulked. I haven't done any of that. I realized pretty quickly this was going to be overwhelming, and I did not want to bog myself down with all those little details. So we're getting the paint off of this thing, and then we're going to come back and start working on all the little details. At this point I have this dark brown that you see here, and then a little bit on the top back, and this thing's done. You know, all the paint's off. So I'll show you that in a little bit here once we get it. But in the meantime, let's talk about how we're doing this, the process we're doing it, making sure we stay safe while we're doing it. So number one, the product that we're using here is Quick Strip Stripper. Can also be called aircraft stripper. It's the same thing. This stuff is gnarly. If you saw my video on the windows, I mentioned there, you don't want to be breathing this stuff in. So I'm outside, there's a decent breeze here most days, so I'm not wearing a respirator. Anytime this is used inside, you absolutely have to wear a respirator. So the other thing with this stuff is, once you take it out of the can, you can't put it back in. So what we're doing is, I've just found an old metal can here, and I've got a paintbrush that I've been able to reuse, and I just fill this up, I work on my spot, and we go from there. All the while we're wearing gloves. I've got nitrile gloves the whole time we're doing this. And then what we're going to do is kind of a two-pronged thing here. We've got a paint scraper and we've got a plastic brush. I started with a metal scraper and realized pretty quick that was a terrible idea. It was scratching the aluminum. Did a little reading and saw that that is not the correct way to do it. So I went to the hardware store and I bought some plastic scrapers. Those lasted about 5 minutes before the edges got worn down. I went to go online to buy more, and I discovered this thing, which is amazing, and it has been a complete game changer. Get a little closer here. This is a disposable paint scraper, and what this is, it's like a single-edged razor blade on here, but they're disposable. And so for like, I don't know, 15, 18 bucks or something, you can get like 100 of these things with the handle, and it's probably only going to be maybe 100 or a little more that I use for the whole thing. So I bought 2 of them, and they just snap in here, and that's been working awesome. Got somebody driving by right now on a side-by-side, sorry for the noise. but essentially this gives us a sharp edge all the time that's not going to scratch the metal. I swap these out very often on at least the first scrape when we're taking off a lot of paint. This speeds it up big time. Highly recommend this. And then I just recently got this. This is just a plastic brush, and I got this for some of the detail work, like around these grates here. This is going to be really hard to do with a scraper, and so I've been finding I can come in and do it like this, and it just kind of gets around some of the contours and cleans that paint off. So not 100% critical, but it's been very helpful for this part. All right, so now what we're going to do is we are going to apply some paint stripper, and I'll show you guys how it works here. So first things first, I'm going to get my gloves on, and now I'm going to pour a little bit of stripper. So we're going to open this up, and we're just going to dump it in this cup we've been using. I've been using the same cup for like 2 months, the same brush. You get like a little bit of a film on it sometimes. I just brush it out on a piece of cardboard. I've been putting down pieces of cardboard on the ground just to help catch the paint as it comes off. And that's been helpful to kind of contain the mess here, and then eventually I'll scrape it off and throw it out. All right, so all we're going to do is just take our paintbrush and just start brushing this on. And we want to go pretty heavy here. Today we're working in the shade, which is hugely helpful. If you're doing this in the sun, it's really difficult, especially if it's hot. This stuff evaporates before it can actually do anything. So when I work on hot days, I actually go back and do a second coat right after. I have read that one way you can make this last longer and not evaporate is by taking a sheet of plastic like saran wrap or painter's plastic and actually go over the material, the paint stripper, to help it just sit there longer and do its job. I haven't tried that, but I have a feeling that would probably work pretty well. I've just been working in small periods of time, so I just haven't taken the time to try that. And you want to work in a somewhat manageable area here. If you get too far ahead, then you kind of end up getting stuck with moving to the next phase as well. You know, usually I'll get one going, I'll let it sit for a little bit, and then I'll get another section going. So while I'm scraping the first section, the stripper for the second section is working. Because you want to let this sit for like a good 10 to 15 minutes to really let it start working. And the longer it sits, the more it's going to do. You know, I've been in a hurry and I've tried rushing this. It's not the way to go. If you rush it, it just won't work, and you just end up applying more and you end up using more stripper. And at $50 a gallon, you don't really want to be using any more of that than you have to. I'm going to go ahead and get this on, and then we're going to give this 10-15 minutes to sit. And you can already see this paint starting to bubble up here along the top. I'll show you guys some close-ups here, what it looks like, and then we'll start scraping. Okay, so here you can see what starts happening. You can see it just bubbling up. It usually does it more around the edges or around rivets like this. The paint is just peeling off. And so where it works like this, it works awesome. I mean, this is only just a few minutes and you can see it's literally coming off in sheets. And so what we're trying to do is get off this top layer as much as possible this first time, and then we're going to go back and then we'll reapply and just keep taking layers off. This usually takes 3 to 5 applications. This part of the trailer in the shade has been taking about 3. So let's let this sit and we'll come back to it. Okay, it's been about 15 minutes, so I'm going to put a fresh blade in my scraper here, a plastic blade, and I've got my brush. I'm going to try just scraping off some of this brown up here. Our goal, the perfect world, is to get the entire layer of brown off to expose what's underneath. If we can do that, we can reapply and just keep chipping our way at it, but we'll see how it goes. Certain spots put up more of a fight than others. Okay, so after one round of scraping here, this was pretty successful. It took off most of the brown on the siding. There are times when it takes 2-3 coats just to get the brown off. On the vent here, it's not working as well. So got a little bit off, but I think what I'm going to do, rather than fighting this, as this is kind of all evaporating, I'm going to go back and put another coat on, see if that helps. So once we get the majority of this paint off and we put more of the stripper on, it starts working a lot better because it can get underneath the edges of the paint, I think. So like here we've got most of the brown off, but a few spots stuck. Now I can go back with a fresh scraper and it just comes right off. Nice and easy. So this is the second scraping. And here this should take off the rest of the brown and get it down to just the last little bit. I'm hopeful we can do it in 3 coats here. We'll see how it goes. I'm going to scrape this again. I've got some sitting on the door here that's starting to break free, and we'll just keep applying until this comes off. All right, so we've got basically 99% of the paint off of the surface now here. There's still a lot of gunk and whatnot on here, and this vent panel is going to require a little more, but on the actual siding, it's looking pretty good. So I'm going to take a paper towel and just kind of run this around and just try to knock off any of the loose material and just clean this up a little so I can see what I've got left. Okay, this is looking pretty good. We're just gonna go and do kind of some spot touch-ups here, wherever there's spots left, and then we'll focus on getting this grate done. Okay, so got the sun coming around on me here. This panel is good at this point. We're gonna call this done. The one spot here you can see still has some color here. This looks like it was repaired probably at the factory for some reason, probably dented. And you know, there are a couple little spots that maybe have a teeny tiny little bit here and there. I'm just not that concerned about it. I am going to be coming back before paint with a Scotch-Brite pad, a red Scotch-Brite pad, and just scuffing all this to etch it a little bit, to clean up some of the oxidation that will probably form after I've removed the paint. There are some spots even here where there's a little more obvious oxidation. And so ultimately, you know, this panel took about an hour to do. If I was going to keep this going, I would move down this way and I would work on 2 panels at once. So I would be putting stripper on this panel while I'm scraping that panel and just do that all the way down. It speeds it up a lot. I didn't do that here for 2 reasons. 1, because I wanted to show you guys, and 2, because of this refrigerator vent panel. I knew this would be quite a bit more work to get this cleaned up, so I figured I would just kind of do that on its own. But this cleaned up really well. It's in nice good shape here. We're not going to be using this for a refrigerator vent anymore, so we're going to permanently close this, but we're going to leave it. I like the look of it, and I don't want to try to replace any of the siding, so it still needs to look good, and I think we accomplished that today. So this is what I've been working on all the way around the camper, just little by little, and you know, this process has been the same basically all the way around. So that's it for paint stripping. We finally have all the paint off the aluminum after many, many months of work and many hours. That kicked my butt, and I think it'll probably be the most difficult part of this process just because of how big that one project is and for how long it went. It was really hard to keep motivation up after doing that in like every bit of my free time for 3-4 months in a row. So I'm excited to get on to some of the other little projects. We are going to be removing the bumper. We're going to be building a new cargo door. We're going to put some patch panel or a patch panel up. We're going to just get into lots of little stuff. All of those things I want to happen before I prime. So make sure you subscribe and check out our next video when it comes out. It's going to cover a bunch of those little projects before we get this thing sprayed. One more thing, you're probably wondering why I haven't shown you the final product with all the paint off, and that is because I want you guys to stick around for the next video and check out the final product before it's ready for primer. It is going to look awesome with everything stripped off of it, everything scuffed. We're going to have all kinds of new stuff ready to go. So please subscribe and follow along for the next video. Thank you.